can't believe I'm doing this again. It has been a hot second. I don't think I've uploaded a video in maybe like 3 years. So much has changed. So, hello. Some of you might be returning. Some of you might be seeing this video for the first time. I'm Jo. This is Jo Knows Money. I was previously Janelle Knows Money. But with new phases and transitions in life comes new names sometimes. And so a lot of the people in my life call me Jo now. So that is where we will be shifting this channel. I'm going to be shifting around a lot. I'm a little bit antsy, and I feel like a lot of my videos in the past were more just like sitting and weren't as casual, and I want these videos to come off more as having a conversation. I also have, is it showing up the camera? I have notes that I'm referencing on my phone, so you might be seeing me look to the lower left-hand corner. Yeah, I think it'll be helpful. Make sure I stay on task. So today we're going to be talking about understanding merit cycles in the workplace. The intention of this video is for folks that are relatively new to the workforce or are moving to a company that perhaps has a merit cycle and they haven't had that in the past. Typically larger companies have merit cycles that are more formalized and happen during specific times of the year. So a lot of the organizations that I've worked at operate with the fiscal year that ends in December. And so budget season closes out the previous October, November, and then you begin a new year with a new budget, and you begin a merit cycle sometime between February and March. Sometimes people have effective dates, so when your increase would be applied as of March 1st, sometimes it's April 1st. Again, this is gonna differ company by company, so I would recommend perhaps checking your employee handbook. I think it'll give you a more accurate representation of timeline and what that looks like. What else do we want to talk about? Oh, I think typically like what is a merit cycle? I want to break it down to like the most basic of degrees. So this video might not be for everybody. You might have some of this information, or I will timestamp some of the stuff below in the description and you can jump around if you'd like to. I don't like my notes. Talking generally about like what a merit cycle is. How do we want to go about this? I feel like this is kind of chaotic. We'll see how it turns out, I guess. So a merit cycle is basically a formalized process in which your base pay is reviewed by the compensation team or even an HR team, generally speaking. Your manager as well would have like a large stake in the game. A lot of times they're being provided with recommendations, but they're ultimately making the decisions. Typically, a merit cycle follows a performance review cycle because a lot of times recommendations are based off of performance ratings. So how this would look is the fiscal year ends. Say it ends in December. You would submit your performance review. Your manager would review your review, any peer reviews, and then they would write your review and give you some type of rating. Some companies do calibration sessions, which means all of the managers get together and they advocate for the folks on their team and make sure that there's consistency across the performance ratings. Once that process is said and done, then the ratings are provided to somebody like me. I work in compensation, and then from there, I'm going to model out what the organization can afford when it comes to what our budget is and what those ratings look like. So when I then provide a merit sheet to a manager that includes everybody that reports up through them, it'll have a recommendation in it. Some companies do this far more informalized than formalized, far simpler than others. Again, complexity depends on your organization. Sometimes organizations will budget in such a way that you have a 3% increase for everybody, and that is multiplied by people's base salaries, and it is given to the person as a budget, and they can distribute it however they want. Organizations that I've worked at, and from like a pay parity, just fairness perspective, I like to do it in such a way that you have some type of merit matrix. So what that means is on one side, it has performance rating, and then on the other side, it shows where you sit in your salary range. And so say you get a 4 in your performance review and you're below the midpoint, you're going to get a recommendation that's higher than, say, if you got a 3 and you're below the midpoint. Or maybe somebody else gets a 4, and so you have like an equitable performance. However, they're above the midpoint. They would get a lower recommendation. So it's generally making things more equitable across the org. Of course, ultimately at the end of the day, decisions are up to managers. And so they can override those types of decisions or recommendations, I guess, and go with their instincts and how they want to award their merit dollars. Because sometimes it makes sense that somebody's over the midpoint. They might get a 4, but they could be a really high 4. And so perhaps if that's the case, then they will get a higher percent increase, even if the grid maybe says there's not. With a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of nuance. There's structure built into it in order, again, to like eliminate as much bias as possible and create fairness. But at the end of the day, like, every one of these line items are people, and we want to make sure that we're considering the people at first and foremost. So that's one of the things that can be on a merit sheet. Again, all of this depends on the organization. I wonder how many times I'm going to say that during this video. But something else that can be on a sheet is if you have an annual bonus target. That could, yes, be on the sheet as well. The initial calculation could be on there. Sometimes annual bonus targets are calculated in such a way that includes company performance and not just individual performance. So that could be taken into consideration, and folks can move it up or down. Some organizations don't have annual bonuses at all, but have some type of like discretionary bonus. I'm talking really fast. Have some type of discretionary bonus, which means that a manager or like a VP, I guess whoever owns the spreadsheet, has a pool of money, and they will receive some type of guidelines sometimes that help them distribute it, but they will look at that pool and they will distribute it as they see fit. I'm trying to think of what else would be important there. I always tell people that a lot of times discretionary bonuses, like components, I guess, like do different things. So base salary a lot of times is for right now, the work that you're doing in this moment. A lot of times I like to think about discretionary bonuses or an annual bonus as backward looking, because it's looking at the performance over the past year, and a lot of times they're like one-time payments that reward you for a specific project or something like that. And then to transition into equity, some organizations are public, and other organizations do equity in other ways too, but we're just going to talk about public companies. So you're listed on the stock exchange, have equity, and so you can receive some sort of dollar amount that is then calculated as a number of shares that you receive over a period of time into the future. So I like to talk about equity as very like future facing, as like some type of retention, in order to make sure that we're keeping people at the organization, and motivating them to work hard as well. But again, every organization has a different compensation philosophy, and with that philosophy means there's going to be different types of comp, and different emphases on different types of comp. So what I mean is some organizations focus more on equity, and so folks might receive more equity than any other type of comp. Some organizations are going to focus on base salary because maybe they can't provide equity and they don't provide bonuses, so their base salaries might be higher. Again, a lot of this is so dependent on the philosophy of the organization that you work at. What else do I have in my notes? I feel like I've kind of just been like super casually talking about each one of these things, but I hope it's succinct enough that you're getting something out of this. Something else that I think is important in talking about like what a merit cycle is, what it encompasses, is like how to best advocate for yourself. I think sometimes folks wait until they receive the news of their merit increase in order to make some type of ask. I would say, just very bluntly, this is the worst time that you can advocate for yourself. And the reason for that is because by the time you're receiving a letter that says like, hey Bobby, you got a 3% increase, it's kind of done. At that point, the increases have been approved. They've like gone through a CFO level approval. They've been like reviewed by a lot of people. At that point, it's already being distributed to payroll. It's being uploaded to the HR systems, and the budget is gone, essentially. I think that's the biggest point here, is if you're advocating for yourself, when you receive your letter, there probably isn't any more budget for you to receive more money. So what I would encourage you to do in advocating for yourself, is to do it right now. So if your fiscal year ends in December and your merit cycle is happening in February, March, January, perfect time to start having some of these conversations. So you can talk to your manager and explain to them what your expectations are, what you're hoping for, and then they can better advocate for you as they go through the merit cycle and input recommendations. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's like anything else there. What else did I write down? Yeah, just to have one-on-one conversations with your manager early in the cycle. Again, January, set your expectations, what you're hoping to achieve. I feel like a really good way to frame this is in like a how can we get there together. In advocating for yourself, I just would be mindful of who you're advocating to and what their management, budgeting, work style is, and making sure you're advocating in such a way that they're really going to hear you, Some people that you work for want you to be very blunt and just say, this is what I want. Other folks, you might have to be more cautious around, and or make some type of roundabout ask, unfortunately. So I just would keep in mind people's management styles and how they might respond to having this type of conversation and the ask. Let's see. I wrote down, when you're discussing your compensation, perhaps come from a place of curiosity and inquiry rather than like demanding something. Wanting to have like an open conversation about it, I think, is the best pointer I can give you. And don't be afraid to ask questions. In a lot of states now, there are so many different pay transparency legislation. Wow. In a lot of states, there is more pay transparency legislation. In California, right, they post on the job postings, so you can always see like where you are in your range to some degree. However, I wouldn't be afraid to like specifically ask like, what is my range? Again, in some places they're required to give it to you if you ask. In other places that isn't the case, but it's, I think, still worth it to give it a go and see if that's information they'd be open to having a conversation with you about. Yeah, I don't know that I have much else to talk about. It has been kind of a rambly video, and if you've made it this far, I'm really glad you did. If you have any questions or comments, or there's anything you'd like me to expand upon in either another video, let me know in the comments. Did I say that already in the comments? Yeah, ask questions. Let me know. We'll see what posting looks like for this channel in the future. I'm not totally sure, but I'm happy to be here, and I hope, again, this video is helpful at least to one person. If it is, then I would say it's a smashing success for me. Yeah, let me know. Thanks for being here. All right, bye.